Hey guys, Sleepy Reader here. I've got a review of two trades, two collections of comics. Frankenstein, Agent of S.H.A.D.E, Volume 1, with the title War of the Monsters, and Prophet, Volume 1, sort of, with the title Remission. It's really Volume 1 of the rebooted Prophet, which keeps the old numbering that harkens back to Rob Liefeld days. So this is issues 21 through 26. But 21 is really the beginning of the new Prophet, which has so little to do with the old Prophet that you really don't need to know anything about the old Prophet, except maybe that he was kind of a super soldier of sorts. Yeah, so to me these books kind of have a lot in common. They both are feature way out there science fiction that really gets to the point of being surreal, and kind of pulpy, go for broke science fiction. Just make it as extreme as possible. And of the two, I found I thought I'd mastered this mirror thing with my computer, and now I've gotten bad at it again. Of the two, I found Prophet to be really interesting and artistic, you might say, but less satisfying. And I loved Frankenstein, Agent of S.H.A.D.E. And it's hard to know how to review these, like talk about every issue in the book or sort of the overall thing and what do you spoil and what don't you spoil, because to talk about later issues in a book, particularly in Prophet, is to spoil the surprises from the early issues. So anyway, I'll do my best, and I think I'll just warn you when I get to the spoilers on Prophet. And you may want to know the spoilers because you may want to know what Prophet's really about before you buy it. Or you may prefer to be surprised, even if that means you're buying something you don't quite know what it is. So my own personal story with Prophet is I picked up issue 27 and liked it quite a bit, decided to put it on my pull list and pick up the trade, which I knew was about to come out. And with issue 27, I was very impressed by the kind of European-style art and the extreme science fiction and all the weird creatures and characters, and I was really excited that I would soon get the trade and I would learn more about all these things and delve into the history behind it all. But to my surprise, that's not what happened when I read the trade. It does follow this character, John Prophet, who wakes up in the far future, and he's got a mission, and there's a voice in his head telling him what to do. And in the first 3 issues, we wander across the surface of a very changed, grim, kind of desolate, dark planet Earth. The voice in his head and the mission that Prophet knows he's on is to get to this tower and help awaken the Earth Empire. And so we get kind of a interesting and highly inventive tour through all the strange things you can see, that you could see on this Earth that's probably, a million years from now. There's nothing besides John Prophet that really looks like humans. Here's a little diagram showing us the tower he's supposed to get to. There is dialogue here, but throughout most of the books, through all the comics, most of the storytelling is told through captions. And the captions are someone narrating to us a certain amount of what John's going through, but they don't give us any deep psychology of him. They tell us about the voice in his head and a few of his feelings and give us a little bit of background on the cultures he's going through. And he has to wear all these strange sort of biological creatures to survive. there's a coolness to the fact that they don't explain too much and you have to figure it out. But as you start figuring it out, all these little things make sense. It even gets to the point where he loses his arm and is able to put on this sort of biological thing onto his arm, and it grows a new arm for him. That's just a taste of the kind of things that go on here. It's very dreamlike and very it's very intense, yet sort of boring, because we kind of slog slowly through the whole 3 issues of traveling across Earth and seeing strange things, and then we get to our goal, and we're kind of surprised by what happens at the end. I was surprised. And now I'm going to, at the end of the first 3 issues, and now I'm going to spoil it, because I can't really talk about the rest of the book. And for most of you, you'll probably want to know this about the book before you buy it. So when I hold up this issue of Prophet again, you'll know that I'm done spoiling. Essentially, what we start to discover through the rest of the book, and all the stories beyond the first 3 issues are individual or one-shot stories. But not with real endings, just little episodes, one-shot episodes. But each episode is about a different John Prophet. And we see all those different John Prophets at the end of issue 3. But it really gets emphasized to us by issue 4, how different they can all be. So our John Prophet in issue number 4 has a tail. And he encounters other John Prophets who have radiation sickness and have gone crazy, and he has to fight them, and it gets kind of gory. So, and then at the end of this issue, he meets even more John Prophets. And by later issues, we start picking up on the idea that there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of John Prophets. Scattered all over the remnants of this Earth Empire. And as best I can tell so far, the Earth Empire was run by these sort of female big brains who are the voices inside the John Prophets' heads, and sometimes appear to them as these wispy female ghosts. Here we have 3 different John Prophets. Each one slightly different weapons. One of these is actually a woman. So we get all these cloned variations of John Prophet, this super soldier who exists in kind of a half-life throughout time, it seems. But the Earth Empire is trying to wake itself back up and wake up all the John Prophets. And at the end, as best I can tell, there are some John Prophets who have escaped the control of these queen minds that control them, probably by wearing these strange helmets. And that's what. So in that issue where I first read, I think that's one of those helmets there, perhaps. We're actually following, and I never realized it, the adventures of one of the John Prophets who perhaps is against the Earth Empire. I think. I'm not sure. So you can tell that I've read basically 7 issues, and I still don't know very much. So I'm done with that real spoilerific part. But what it comes down to is these are all little pieces of a tapestry, and it takes a lot of patience to put them together. And there's going to have to be a lot more issues before they really can come together. And the writer and the various artists he works with are very good at creating these landscapes that we wander through and starting the rebirth of the Earth Empire. But what plot they have in mind and where it's going, who knows? So I think this is a book for someone who's happy with the trip and doesn't care where we're going to. If you just enjoy wild science fiction and wild ideas, this is a pretty good choice for you. If you don't bother with this. It is only $10, so if you're even slightly curious, $10 undiscounted, and I got it discounted. I could have gotten an even cheaper discount. On the other hand, I unreservedly loved Frankenstein, Agent of S.H.A.D.E. in Volume 1. The first 4 issues in particular are kind of pulp science fiction perfection. And pulp science fiction combined with pulp horror, with this monster squad. You've got a wolf man, you've got a undersea creature, you've got a vampire, you've got a mummy, all led by Frankenstein's monster, who's this kind of almost eternal warrior, stoic, humorless, and what's the word? He's an old-fashioned romantic at the same time, and he still loves his wife, who's been estranged from him for 60 years. This is the wife there with the 4 arms. They just call her Lady Frankenstein. So this is just full of wild ideas, but a completely different set of wild ideas to Prophet, except they're both science fiction. They both can be kind of horrifying. But the horror here is done for fun. And it's done with great panache by the artist Alberto Ponticelli, who has this kind of scratchy, very detailed style. And you can see he does very busy panels, but it's all very clear and you can follow it very well. A lot of that might be, helped by his colorist, who is Jose Villarrubia. So yeah, the art is excellent. The stories are lively and wild and slightly gross, but it's always monsters or robots getting hurt so far, not usually humans. Although in the background there's child sacrifice and stuff. The original covers are wonderful sort of posters that could have, been for great B horror movies or C horror movies. So yeah, I loved the first 4 issues. This has 7 issues in it total. Then you got a kind of pause where we spent time with OMAC. It was a crossover thing, and it got a perfectly enjoyable battle with OMAC. And it does eventually create a plot thread which goes on later, where OMAC's controller, Brother Eye, takes control of the humids, the humanoid robots or sort of biological robots that only live for 24 hours that serve S.H.A.D.E. S.H.A.D.E. Exists much like the Secret Avengers headquarters. It exists in a tiny little ball that floats around Earth, and you have to be teleported and shrunk into it at the same time. And inside the ball is a whole city with Ray Palmer, who we know as the Atom, as one of their chief scientists, who's invented a lot of the technology that they use. So it's a roller coaster ride. It doesn't stop. After those first 4 issues, each issue is a bit more of a one-off adventure that has threads in it that tie to the next adventure. And I've gone ahead and bought the remaining I've caught up, although I haven't read them yet, the issues that come after this trade, because I was so excited I wanted to get it and add it to my pull list. So I'll have to see what happens next. I think Jeff Lemire's talents here are for both the wild plots and the characters. Even though it's a wild roller coaster ride, he never lets sight of the characters. He keeps them developing and keeps giving them interesting little beats. So just can't wait to see where it goes. I've heard Matt Kint, I think, picked it up, started writing it with issue 11 or 10, and I've heard that he's doing a good job too. And I've enjoyed his mind management, so I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, if that at all sounds interesting to you, snag a copy of Frankenstein, Agent of S.H.A.D.E. It does essentially complete the main plot lines, but the last page is a cliffhanger for the next issue in the common way that they do these things. So, yeah, the fun books, both actually. Just this one is harder work. Perhaps more rewarding, particularly if you want to be challenged. Whereas the Frankenstein is made just to be fun. I did accidentally pick up issue 7, and an interesting little note of not too much importance is in the comic book version, you get a splash page with a title and credits, The Siege of S.H.A.D.E City Part 2, and the same page inside the trade, if you give me a minute to find it, doesn't contain any of that. Doesn't have the credits, doesn't have the title. There are no titles on any of these except on a few of them. Titles appear on the reprinted cover. At first I thought they each had a title, which would make a lot of sense, the title for each chapter appearing on the cover, the reprinted cover. There, The Rise of the Humids. But I'm not sure if so they didn't really bother retaining the chapter titles the way they have them in the comic book. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure what they were thinking. Because it would be fun to have chapter titles, but maybe not to have the credits on every chapter. Another interesting thing is when they show the black and white, I noted this when I reviewed Wonder Woman, they show that there's all this gray wash. And I assume that that's done by the cover artist to guide the colorists in the shading in their coloring. So I just get these little clues as to how art is done these days. Although there isn't, maybe part of why I like the coloring on the inside, because the line work is so scratchy and busy. The artist wisely doesn't try to do too much sort of modeling with his color work. But maybe that's always controlled by, maybe sometimes when I blame the colorist for too much modeling, maybe that was actually done by the artist. I don't know. I'm still puzzling out the new as in this decade's relationship between the artist and the colorist. So anyway, that's my my fun with science fiction, with pulpy science fiction and comic books. As a longtime reader of science fiction books, I almost feel like current comic books do a better job with science fiction than current published science fiction. Often because science fiction has been overtaken by these subgenres that just aren't, to me, core science fiction. Anyway, talk to you all later. Bye-bye.